she'd been drinking too much eggnog, and we begged her not to go. But she forgot her medication, and she staggered out the door
into the snow. Well, hey folks, welcome to the Drunk Ranking Christmas Special, the series where I drunk tweet a series of movies over @Matt_presents on Twitter, and then I come on camera and rank them drunkenly. And boy, have we got a great one for this holiday season. I wonder who that could be. Why, it's A Christmas Story, an absolute Christmas classic. Come on in, A Christmas Story. What's that? You brought your kids. Oh, well, you bring them in too. Wow. That's a lot more kids than I would have guessed. Who's their father? They all have different fathers. Interesting.
I suggest you start drinking and don't stop till New Year's.
Oh, that's good rum. This eggnog's like not even a week old, but I'm definitely still a little iffy on it. Welcome one and all to the Drunk Ranking Christmas Special. This year we've got a very interesting franchise to look at. I'm talking, of course, about all the mini-sequels to the Christmas classic, A Christmas Story. Arguably, there are 4, and not a single one of them connects to the other ones. Every single one of these 4 sequels is in its own continuity. I thought fucking Halloween was bad, but Christmas Story, that's 4 different continuities. Plus, of course, the original film, which we will discuss at the end. Now, normally I don't review this few movies in a drunk ranking, but for a Christmas special, sure. Especially when it's such a weird Christmas special. So, let's start things off with the worst of these Christmas Story sequels. I forgot my button. I'm gonna go get my button. Ollie Hop Noodle's Haven of Bliss is the only one here you could really argue isn't a Christmas Story sequel. You see, A Christmas Story is based on a book from author Gene Shepard, who's actually the narrator in A Christmas Story. So when you hear the guy narrating in A Christmas Story, yeah, that's the guy who wrote the book this is based on. And actually, before A Christmas Story, there were a few TV movies based on those books as well. And you could sort of see Ollie Hop Noodle's Haven of Bliss as a follow-up to the TV specials, rather than A Christmas Story. But it still came out after A Christmas Story, like well after A Christmas Story, and well after those other TV specials. So I'm going to argue it does not belong in the continuity with those. It is at least trying to be a Christmas Story sequel. And oh my god, this movie is so fucking boring. Oh my god, this movie is boring. Like, it's trying to be like a National Lampoon Vacation movie, kinda. But it is just utterly failing. Like, nothing that happens in this fucking movie is interesting. There's not a single interesting moment in this movie. Like, they spend this whole thing building up to them going out to, like, Ollie Hop Noodle's place, and they get there, like, 5 minutes before the end of the film, right? It's half the movie before they even start their road trip, so what was the point? I mean, I get it. A Christmas Story is a little loose, disconnected, episodic, but there's still a story. There's something set up at the beginning, and it feels like we are driving towards it closer and closer the whole movie. Where Ollie Hop Noodle, it feels like it beats around the bush so much, and then finally goes, okay, alright, now we're gonna go to the thing we promised you. Oh, way too much rum. Not enough nog. That almost might be too much nog. I might have overcompensated. We'll go with too much nog. This was, I think a Disney Channel movie, actually. It was the 80s. This came out in the late 80s, so it wasn't like the Disney Channel movies you grew up with. This was more Disney's movie of the week, you know. But it was a Disney Channel original movie to some degree, and that actually really hurts it. There's like a point where like Ralphie says like, "Oh golly dang it" or something. It was like some really like weak, low levels like not swearing, like non-swearing, and I'm like, oh, well, that's different from A Christmas Story. Because one of the things I really like about Christmas Story is that the kids just swear the whole movie. It's like, yeah, that's what kids did. That's how kids speak. Like, this is a completely accurate depiction. This is like one of the, at least at the time, one of the very few like honest depictions of children. Because it's like, yeah, kids do just fucking swear. They have filthy little mouths. And so like the drop down in that from this, just it's palpable. You can really tell that they've gone from, you know, like a movie where they're allowed to say whatever they want to a Disney Channel movie of the week. I compared this film quite unfavorably to Jean-Luc Godard's Weekend. I said this was like Weekend if it was a Disney movie of the week. And no, Godard's Weekend is very deliberately challenging. Like, part of it is like, ooh, it's about like the horrible mundanity of things, and like, oh, look at this horrible situation, and like, I'm not big on Weekend. I don't think it's like the greatest Godard film, but it does intentionally what Ollie Hopnoodle does by mistake, right? Ollie Hopnoodle really drives home the same points Weekend is getting at. It just doesn't know it's doing that. It's just being really boring and really hard to watch. Randy was like exceptionally shitty in this movie. Like, Randy doesn't do a whole lot in A Christmas Story. He's just sort of like, ah ha ha, the kid brother. Look at my dopey kid brother. In this one, he's such a pain in the ass. Like, fuck this kid. This kid is so annoying. There's a fucking line in this where he describes the car trip as hour after boring hour, and I'm like, oh, an apt description of this movie. Jerry O'Connell plays Ralphie, the same year he starred in Stand By Me, so I mean, is not a bad pick for Ralphie, but you know, I wish he was in a better movie. Like, Jerry O'Connell does nothing to save this movie, right? He is just there. He is a pick for Ralphie, you know. Really not sure why they didn't get the original kid back for this one. But, because like, Ralphie has aged up a little. He's like a teenager in this one. Weirdly, like, having a job is a plot point in every single one of these Christmas Story sequels. So he and his friends, Schwartz and Flick, get jobs moving refrigerators, and it's a job he fucking hates. He's terrible at it. But that's a weirdly recurring thing in all of these. In this one, he gets a job. In the next one, My Summer Story, he gets like a part-time work so he could save up to like buy a thing. He also gets a job in the second one. He also gets a job in A Christmas Story 2. And you know, he's an adult who's trying to become a writer in A Christmas Story Christmas. And he's agreed that, like, if he's not published by the end of the year, that he'll go back to having a normal job. So in all three of these, getting a job is, like, a plot point. Which is weird that all four of these feature that as a plot point. I mean, I guess, like, because A Christmas Story is all about childhood. And it's like, okay, all of these, what's something we have moving on from childhood? Oh, we go out and we get a job. Honestly, I have talked about Ollie Hop Noodle's Haven of Bliss longer than I thought I could. I've had more to say about this movie than I thought I possibly could, because this movie is really dull. This movie is not interesting. I did not enjoy watching this one. Let's move on to the next movie. You know, I love it when I'm watching a movie and I just kind of chuckle to myself and I go, this is a good movie. I had that experience recently with the Christmas classic The Brain. The Brain is a really good movie. A Christmas Story 2 gave me the opposite experience. It's one of those movies you watch and just at various points of the film you're like, oh my god, this sucks. This movie sucks. It really does suck. It took, like, the outline, the framework of A Christmas Story, and then just did it again with none of the charm or the character or the life or the heart. It's A Christmas Story again. Right? Look at us. We're doing all the things they did in A Christmas Story. Again. Right, it's such a derivative movie, right? It is doing beat by beat A Christmas Story 1 again. Ralphie's a little older in this one, but you know, they still got the gift he's working towards. This time he's trying to get a car. He wants the car instead of a BB gun. He's a little older. He wants a car. They repeat the tongue to the pole joke. He puts on an embarrassing costume again. The old man comes through for him at the end to get him the gift he really wants. It's all, we're playing the hits. Remember this scene from A Christmas Story? Well, we're doing it again in this one. Ralphie has like a crush on on a girl in this movie, which I mean, I guess if they're trying to age him up, that's like a reasonable thing to add to the movie, but like it feels so out of place here. It's like, okay, Ralphie's got a crush on this girl we've never heard of before, and that through most of the movie, it seems like he has absolutely no chance with, and then miraculously, right at the end, whoa, she's into him. It's not good. It's not interesting. I mean, I guess I could say that about the whole movie. The whole movie's not good. The whole movie's not interesting. They do cast a kid who looks a little more like the original Ralphie than either previous sequel did. This kid looks more like, and it made sense that they didn't bring the original Ralphie back for this one because, you know, he's like, in this one he's like, I guess 16. He's almost 16 because he wants a car, right? And this came out in 2012, so the original Ralphie was a little old for this role. Also, it's super weird to me that this came out in 2012, because I remember it coming out way more recently than that. I thought this was like a 2016, 2017 movie, and then I saw 2012, and I'm like, really? It's been 10 years since A Christmas Story 2 came out? I remember when that came out, and everyone going like, what? Why is there a Christmas Story 2? That's so weird. I thought that was way more recently than it was. Jeez. Almost nothing about this movie is good. They have... Fuck me. God damn it, I'm gonna have to look up the actor. Hold on. They have Daniel Stern as the old man, and I gotta say, all of these sequels struggle to bring back the old man. No one does it like Darren McGavin. Daniel Stern is good. He's playing a different character, I think. I don't think he's playing the old man is the problem. He is playing this like pretty good fatherly figure, but I mean he's not the old man from A Christmas Story. He's Daniel Stern. Also, the new flick in this movie I recognized from Green Room, so that's an interesting connection. He was in Green Room, and he was in A Christmas Story 2. What a career. Yeah, I mean, A Christmas Story 2 sucks. Maybe not as much as people make it out to. Apparently, it's like one of the lowest rated movies on Letterboxd, and I'm like, okay, that's a little much. It's bad. It sucks, but it's not that bad. It's like, I don't know. This is kind of exactly what I was expecting from A Christmas Story. So, like, I could not imagine A Christmas Story 2 that was any different than this one, you know? Despite the fact that there are 4 sequels to this film, this is very much what I imagine when you say A Christmas Story 2. Moving on. A Christmas Story Christmas, which is a horrible name, by the way, is actually the most recent film I have talked about for Drunk Rankings. This came out in November. Like, this came out earlier this year. So, it's the most recent movie I've reviewed for Drunk Rankings. And it's pretty bad. I've ranked it above A Christmas Story 2, but there's a little part of me that almost thinks A Christmas Story 2 deserves the higher ranking. A Christmas Story 2 is, like, abysmally terrible, but this one is just nothing. It's a nothing movie. You're like, okay, you sure did bring back all the characters from A Christmas Story. You sure did put them on screen and have them do things. And I mean, unlike A Christmas Story 2, it doesn't feel like a complete rehash of the first film. It does very much feel like they're trying to tell a different story with these characters, but it's still like, okay, here's all the characters you remember. We have to have them all show up in the movie at some point. And the only one I thought was, like, worth it at all was Scut Farkus, the bully, returning as a cop. I'm like, of course he's a fucking cop. Fuck Scut Farkus. God damn it, Scut Farkus. That's his actual name. Because like, in the first one, I thought that was like a nickname. They just called him Scut. But no, in this one, he has like a name tag that says S. Farkus, and then Ralphie just calls him Scut, and he's like, yeah, that's my name, I'm Scut. That's his real, actual name, what the hell? This one has dealt with the absence of the old man by just killing the character off. He is just not in the movie. Which, you know, they haven't been able to replace him yet, so if they can't replace him, maybe it's best to get rid of him. And that does drive the story. It's like, okay, Ralphie is trying to, like, prove himself as the new old man. Honestly, it doesn't really come off that way, because through a lot of the film, he's doing, like, all these really juvenile, childish things. He and, like, Flick and Schwartz are back in this one. And, like, Flick challenges Schwartz to slide down this giant ice slide. And it's like, you know, challenging your friends to ski off to sled off a dangerous ramp is a lot less endearing when you're a bunch of drunk 50-somethings. You know, it's funny when kids do it, but, like, you guys are way too old for this. Come on, man. Finish my eggnog. Oh, if I can find where I said it. There it is. Popping open some Christmas cheer. One thing I did kind of appreciate about this one is that, like, Ralphie's trying to become an author. So, like, clearly it is taking from Gene Shepard's real life with that. Jean Shepard? Is it Jean or is it Gene? I'm calling him Gene because he is distinctly American, but it might be Jean, actually. Gene Shepard was a writer, obviously. He wrote a book that A Christmas Story is based on, and of course, this movie ends with him writing a story about his old man, because his old man died, so he was trying to write about his old man, and he ends up writing, presumably, the first A Christmas Story. So it's sort of like the backstory for how this got written. Granted, it's nothing like Jean Shepard's actual life, but you know, I think it's nice that they at least, you know, you need a plot for a Christmas Story sequel? Let's just take it from Gene Shepard's real life. They were all based on his life anyway. Yeah, I mean, it feels like less of a retread than 2, and it doesn't suck quite as much as 2, but it just feels so empty and hollow and, like, I don't know, nostalgia pandering. There's a lot of nostalgia pandering in this, but it's also, like it wants you to still think of, like, Ralphie and his friends as kids, but they're not kids, they're fucking old-ass adults. Now, if you had, like, recontextualized this, maybe put it from the point of view of, like, the kids in the movie, and Ralphie really was the old man for this one, maybe that would have been something better, but this movie has no reason to exist. This movie has less of a reason to exist, I think, even than some of these other Christmas Story sequels. This movie is... It's a nothing movie. It's a nothing movie, and I did not enjoy it. So, it runs in the family, alternatively titled My Summer Story, which is what I have elected to call it, because that ties in a little better to A Christmas Story. One title was what it was theatrically, and the other was its, like, video release. I think it was called It Runs in the Family theatrically, but then changed to My Summer Story when it came to VHS, so people would know it's a Christmas Story sequel. I've elected to put up the title as My Summer Story, so that you know it's a Christmas Story sequel. That does indicate that it's a Christmas Story sequel a little better, although It Runs in the Family is possibly a better title. This one feels like the truest Christmas Story sequel. For one thing, it hasn't really aged Ralphie up all that much. Granted, neither did Ollie Hopnoodle. Honestly, this feels like the better version of Ollie Hopnoodle, because Ollie Hopnoodle was also set during the summer. And so, it feels like if you were going to do a summer Christmas Story, you should have gone with this one. Like, skip Ollie Hopnoodle. But this feels like the truest sequel because it came out fairly close to when Christmas Story came out. Granted, it was still like 1991, 1992. They waited a long time to get around to this one. But it was also directed by Bob Clark. They brought back Bob Clark, the director of the original Christmas Story, to make this one. And I don't know if he had any great hand in that, because I've seen some of Bob Clark's other work. I've seen Baby Geniuses. I've seen Baby Geniuses. I've also seen Black Christmas, his other great Christmas classic. But I don't know that I can entirely give Bob Clark the credit here. But it's definitely the most heartfelt of all of these sequels. It's definitely the one that comes the closest tonally to the original Christmas Story, to capturing like the wonder and the whimsy of the original Christmas Story. It even has one or two deliberate callbacks to A Christmas Story, not to a pandering extent. It's not, we're just doing A Christmas Story again, beat for beat. But they do, they bring back the BB gun, and they have a joke about him shooting his eye out. And it even starts, it starts with the house at Christmas, and Ralphie's talking about, oh, that Christmas was great. But then that summer, and then he goes off on this totally other story. There's a pretty big gap in quality here. I liked this one significantly more than I liked A Christmas Story Christmas. Not that I think it's like a great movie or anything, but if you're like a big Christmas Story fan, I think My Summer Story is at least worth checking out. Like, it really tries to be a sequel to A Christmas Story. It comes the closest to really capturing what made A Christmas Story work, Now, it has its downsides. He kind of sets up at the beginning that, like, oh, my mother got in, like he's talking about how he, his father, and his mother all got into wacky adventures that summer. But his mother's story is, like, just a glorified running gag, right? The theater is doing, like, a giveaway of dishes, but every time she comes, it's the same dish. Oh no, whatever are we gonna do? Also, the big thing Ralphie is working towards in this one is a top, which feels a lot lamer than the BB gun he wanted for Christmas. Is there's like this big tough kid who's got like a really cool top, and he has to beat that kid's top at Beyblade. That, of course, makes for some scenes with some very gay undertones. This is easily the gayest of all the Christmas Story sequels because they deal with the Parker's neighbors, the Bumpuses. And in the original Christmas Story, you only see the Bumpus hounds. They're dogs that chase them around. In this one, we actually get to meet the Bumpuses, the family of rednecks that live next door to the Parkers. And Ralphie's old man going to war with them. And one of them's named Big Dicky. They had to know. They had to know. His name is Big Dicky. Come on, man. I do kind of like the Bumpuses. It's fun to see the Bumpuses in this one. They're part of the charm of the movie. Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you're a fan of A Christmas Story, this is like, you know, a very cute Tales from My Childhood type movie. Very much in the vein of A Christmas Story. It's got Gene Shepard narrating again, and while I can't say any of the old man is not the same as he was in A Christmas Story. I don't think any of the performances, apart from Gene Shepard's narration, I don't think any of the performances in this one are quite as good as they were in the original, but I don't know. It's got charm to it. It is not the miserable slog the other three sequels are. It's easily the best of these. That does not make it a perfect film. It does not make it a perfect Christmas Story sequel. Which I suppose will bring us to A Christmas Story, an absolute Christmas classic. Now, I know some people who are not super into this movie, and I understand why. I have heard people criticize this movie for being very cynical and very consumerist. I think criticizing A Christmas Story for being cynical and consumerist is sort of like criticizing RoboCop for being violent. Like, yeah, man, that's the point. That's the joke. That's part of the message. Now, I get it if you don't really want that in your Christmas movie. And I also get that a lot of people who watch this movie don't seem to get that it's satire, that it's openly criticizing American Christmas. But, like, they like this. This is pure, unadulterated Americana right here, okay? Sometimes that's beautiful. Sometimes that's glorious. Sometimes that's really cynical and really consumerist. That's just America, baby. This is pure fucking America right here, right? 3,000 years from now, when you want to explain to like future generations what life was like in 20th century America, A Christmas Story. This is what life was like in 20th century America. This is pure, unadulterated Americana right here. And that is not going to be to everyone's taste. In fact, I think most of the people I've heard complain about this film are Canadian, but that's neither here nor there. It's just, I can't bring myself to hate it. It's so fun. It's so charming. It's so... even when it's like depicting the negative side of things, I'm like, hey, it's real. This is what it's like. This really is what it's like to be a kid around Christmas. It really understands what it is like to be a child. You know, so few films get that. This is a movie about childhood and both the beauty and decay of America, of you know, this wild mixed up country we have going on. It's just, I don't know. I think it's a beautiful film. I really love A Christmas Story. I really do. I think it's overplayed. I think it's overhyped. I think people really don't get what this movie is about. But I love it. I enjoy it. It's one of the realest Christmas movies, you know? And I think that bothers some people. I think it bothers some people how real this movie, because it's Christmas. We want something light. We want something fun. We want something a little whimsical. And, you know, there's whimsy to this. There is a lightheartedness to this. But it's also got its cynical edge. And I think that cynical edge really turns people off. I get it. I get that turns people off. But I really love this movie. I think the performances are great. I think the writing, the dialogue is great. I think it's a really beautiful film. I think it's possibly the best deliberately Christmas movie there is. Now, there are, of course, some movies set on Christmas I might rank a little higher than this one, but as far as just like a movie that is definitely a Christmas movie, that no one is going to deny is a Christmas movie, A Christmas Story might be my favorite. It's really good. I love that this film has eternally associated sexy leg lamps with the birth of Christ. I love that it has given us the go-to replacement word for fuck. Honestly... Here's a fun story. The first time I watched A Christmas Story, I had no idea what word Ralphie said there. He's like, oh, fudge, except I didn't say fudge. And I'm like, what? What word did he say? I don't know. I actually didn't know the word fuck. I had no clue what fudge was supposed to mean. I got it by a year later when I saw it again. I was like, oh, he's saying fuck. So sometime between the first time I watched this movie and the second time I watched this movie, I learned what the word fuck was. But, I genuinely did not know what he was referring to when he said, oh, fudge, in this movie the first time I saw it. I could gush about A Christmas Story forever, probably. But at some point, it gets incoherent. At some point, I'm just repeating myself, you know. It's such a fun, charming little Christmas movie. And yes, it's cynical. Yes, it's consumerist. It's supposed to be. That's part of the point. Just take it all in. This is what Christmas is. If you can't get behind that, it's honestly like... Can you even get behind Christmas? Can you even get behind Christmas if you can't get behind A Christmas Story? Really? Well, that's my Christmas special, folks. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this makes a good send-off, because moving forward, I think I'm just going to upload Drunk Rankings to my second channel. It's too low effort for the main channel. Like I said, I'll be doing Hellraiser. Looking forward to that. Anyways, see you in the new year.